thank you, thank you. So can you hear me, everyone? And a very warm welcome this afternoon. Such a bright afternoon, such a sunny afternoon, and yet you've decided to take time out to spend time with yourself and to really give yourself that space to reflect on a very, very, very important topic. So on strength is forgiveness, or we could also say forgiveness is strength. It's a very, as I said, it's a very topical subject. Everyone to whom you say the word strength is forgiveness or forgiveness is strength, they do a double take, you know, they kind of, okay, yes. So I'm going to start off by saying that much of our experience of life is about being hurt by situations and events that's occurring and which cause us pain and distress in our lives. And in our search for the answers as to why these incidents occurred or why that person did that to me, we tend to feel somewhat better in making someone responsible for the pain and discomfort we are experiencing. And I can actually put my hand up and say that I've been there. And there are times when I'm going there and I have to say, Nina, don't. You know better. So as human beings, judgment, blame, and non-forgiveness is part of our daily menu because on the whole, we don't know our true selves. And because we don't know our true selves, we justify ourselves in believing that the responsibility lies somewhere outside ourselves. And that feeling that someone else is responsible, what does it do? It actually lessens the emotional pain and keeps us safely tucked away inside our fragile comfort zone of non-forgiveness. But what does the absence of forgiveness do to us? That's a very important question that we need to explore. It makes us resentful, it makes us bitter, it makes us filled with hatred and anger, which becomes the basis of our awareness, our consciousness. Non-forgiveness is like locking myself as well as the other person inside a darkened, damp squalor of a dungeon. And I'm being very descriptive here because in some instances, that's how it feels. And when we do that, it's like we're holding ourselves to ransom. It's like carrying a heavy load over a long period of time, which drains away our vital energy. And what's that vital energy? It's the energy of the soul. And that drains our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and ultimately our physical well-being. So the other question I thought I'd ask as I was preparing this talk is, what does non-forgiveness, why does non-forgiveness affect us on different levels? Because I've just mentioned spiritual, emotional, and physical. So why does non-forgiveness affect us on different levels of our consciousness, which is body, mind, and soul? It is because we are carrying rage instead of peace inside our hearts and minds. And we might say that a lot of people are not carrying that, but I'm using that description as a way of describing when we have gone further beyond that continuum where we can use our intelligence to get ourselves out of that state of anger and non-forgiveness. So it's because we're carrying peacelessness inside our hearts and minds. So to forgive is really to set the prisoner free and to discover that the prisoner was myself. And really what this means is that I've stopped all that rage, the resentment, the anger, and the bitterness within, and replaced it with peace and tranquility. And it takes strength to shift from this awareness, this comfort zone that we find ourselves in of non-forgiveness. However, just think about it. It's such a vast difference between being in the prison of a dungeon and being free to feel good about myself and good about the other person or others. So the next question I want to ask is, how do I forgive when the pain of being judged, when the pain of being betrayed, the pain of being abandoned and abused is so overwhelming? And I've been there. We've all been there. So my answer to that is that forgiveness is about releasing. It's about releasing. It's about letting go. Whether it's about releasing an upset due to someone else's action, which is how most of us view forgiveness. But it's not, it's deeper than that in an important way. The Greek word for forgiveness means to send away, to send away. So when we forgive, we are sending away an upset that we are holding on to. And when we learn to forgive or send away any upset, we can become free. And the thought occurs in terms of examples of bereaved mothers, how they forgave their sons or children's killers. But there's one example that I want to refer to at this point. And really for me, it demonstrates how strength is needed to forgive. So in this scenario, after a guilty verdict and a life sentence was given, the mother was given the opportunity to speak directly to the killer. And I was watching this on video and I had goose pimples. She looked him straight in the eyes whilst crying, and she said, in order to get through this process, because presumably she had been given the opportunity, she was told the day before that it was going to be a guilty verdict and that she should prepare herself to face, you know, this person who had killed her son. So she said to him, whilst looking at him with tears in her eyes, she said, in order to get through this process, I knew I had to forgive you because you are a child to me. And as a mother, I have no anger or bitterness towards you. I forgive you from the bottom of my heart. That's what she said to him. And then she went on to say, as a mom, I just want to hug you because there is something that is not connected within you that made you feel so angry. This is a very, very important point for us to note, because in this short space of time, we're going to be touching on it further in this conversation. And another story that I want to introduce at this particular point is is that Nelson Mandela, he occupied a cell, a small cell for 26 years. And that was a tangible reflection of reaching the stage of true forgiveness at the end of that period, which culminated with his release from prison. He stepped straight out of prison into the role of being head of the government. That was a reflection of true forgiveness for me and reconciliation, to heal the past and serve the nation. He couldn't have done it otherwise, hadn't he forgiven. So my story, the need to forgive someone or a situation doesn't have to be foremost in one's mind. It could be that when the person comes into my mind, I quickly pass. What do I mean by that? I mean, I quickly move on to another scene. Why? Because discomfort was triggered when that person came into my mind. And at times like this, it would be good to explore why we feel uncomfortable, because it's these kind of seemingly insignificant roots that keep the pattern of non-forgiveness rooted in our awareness, meaning we don't confront ourselves because it's uncomfortable. We don't confront ourselves because it's uncomfortable. Forgiveness really is a decision to look past the error, to really see the soul's failed attempts to express itself because it has become weakened. Just remembering that inherent within the soul, there is nothing about non-forgiveness or unforgiveness. It's all about positive qualities and virtues. In other words, forgiveness, letting go. So when our aim is to see the soul in the other person, that's what the mother did, which takes considerable strength, especially when we are in the depth of despair and anguish. What we are then doing is we are setting ourselves free, even before we set the other person free. Going back to the mother I mentioned earlier on, this mother did just that by acknowledging the soul's qualities in herself and the soul's qualities in the person who killed her son. And before I started learning about the meditation that I practice, I would have said it's totally impossible to really do that sort of thing. But it's not something that one can do immediately. It's really having spent considerable time working on oneself that once slowly gets to the point where one can see the value and the benefits of really working on forgiveness at that level. So it's always the soul that initiates the actions, because if the soul is filled with positive qualities and virtues, it is always the soul that initiates the action, because it is the soul that acts through the body. Without the soul, the body cannot act. The body cannot think. The body cannot do a single thing. It is lifeless. The body is the house of the soul that the soul lives in. So when we express anger, it is the soul's attempt to express or experience love, because anger cannot come from the soul. Anger cannot come from the soul. It's because when the soul attempts to express or experience love, because we are heavily layered with negative behavior traits, when the soul tries to express love, the action becomes skewed. And what do I mean by that? It's like trying to penetrate a reinforced wall with a needle that breaks through the pressure. So we need to remember that the soul's purpose is always based on good intentions. This means that every mistake we make is about the soul's attempt to express itself, but depending on our awareness, because of that, those layers of learned behaviors and the quiet values that weakens the soul, our attempts become distorted by attempting to fulfill our unmet needs from somewhere or something outside ourselves. And when these needs are not met, there is anger. So, for example, unfulfilled expectations is a good example. If my expectations are not met, there's a tendency to be angry. So true forgiveness really means there is no guilt. And remember, as I said, it's not something that we can achieve just like that. It's something we work on building over a period of time. So true forgiveness means there's no guilt. True forgiveness means there's no shame and no consideration of punishment. Forgiveness and healing means letting go of the motives behind why someone set out to hurt you. And this means becoming innocent of the reason why people bruise and hurt others. Why? Because it isn't the real reason behind the action that we perform. It is because hurt people hurt people. So what do I mean by this? So what does this mean in essence? It means that, and some of you will be able to relate to this. In fact, most of you, I think, especially if you've been practicing personal development, it's because something happened to that person long before you turned up in their lives that caused them to think that if they hurt others, this is making it better. As a result of what happened to them in the past, they have developed a kind of reactive pattern, a kind of personality trait, causing them to act in this way in relationships. They have taken on the identity of the reactive behavior, for example, of anger, in place of their soul's identity, which means there's little access to the inherent qualities of the soul. So when I let go, because I become innocent of the motives behind the behavior, it means that I'm not feeding those negative behaviors. I'm not feeding the negative behavior traits of reaction, which within myself, but being the change. I'm not being angry. I'm kind of letting go of that. And I'm being the change that I wish to see in others. And when I change, others also change, because there is no longer any kind of friction between us. There's simply flow of easiness and lightness. And I just want to mention a quote by Kabril Kahil Gibram, who wrote, he said, "I have learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet I am grateful to these teachers." So the idea is that the people we want to forgive are actually our teachers. And again, that is a concept that it may take time for you to really mull over, work with, in order to begin to see it as logical, as wisdom. Another person, his name is Ludwig. He says, we can experience more peace when we can remember to be grateful in these often trying times. Try simply saying, "Thank you for being my teacher. And thank you for reminding me how best to be." There are some basic steps to forgiveness that are quite helpful for us to follow. And I'm going to just mention what they are, just a few things I've made a note of. So the first thing to do is to make a choice to forgive. Choice is very powerful. And we can say it aloud. We can affirm to ourselves. And we can affirm, "I choose to forgive." And no one has to hear you saying it. I mean, if you drive, I used to do that when I used to drive. when I'm driving fast and the music is blaring, I would bellow out, "I choose to forgive." And you can scream it. And the way you want to just do it, just say it and feel free. It's always helpful to declare that you choose to forgive. So that's the first step, me first. Second step, start by forgiving. So I choose, and then start by forgiving yourself. And you may be thinking, well, why do I need to forgive myself? Because they've done that to me. However, just engage with the idea. I choose to forgive myself for not being the person I need to be when it comes to having the feelings of non-forgiveness. The next step would be choose to forgive the other person. Because remember, if I don't forgive, I'm carrying a burden. If I don't forgive, I've locked myself away in a dungeon. And the affirmation could be, I choose to forgive the other person for not being the type of person I need them to be for me in order that I might feel good about myself. Remember that they are carrying their baggage, which they had long before they met you. And it's very important to remember that forgiveness is really sending away your upsets. It's your own means, your only means of safety. And think about it again. Why is it my only means of safety? If I'm carrying a baggage that is weighing me down, I will get tired as I continue carrying this baggage. Another point I want to mention is that it's very important to be able to have the awareness of releasing the responsibility for any injustice that has been done to you, think has been done to you. And you can say, God, I choose to release to you the responsibility for justice, not really being concerned about what the justice looks like, really, because if you are concerned about that, then you're not letting go. You hold them accountable for anything they have or haven't done to cause this situation. So let the consequences of their action be your responsibility. You're talking to God in this way. From now on, my responsibility is to have positive thoughts and feelings towards that person. Always, always having their best interest at heart. So I'd like to invite you to set yourself a target. And in doing so, I'd like to suggest that you go through this process on a daily basis for the next week. Write down how upset you feel. See if you can feel yourself releasing. It takes time. And it's important for you to be gentle with yourself in practicing forgiveness, whilst remembering that you are unique and perfect as you are right here and now. It doesn't matter what you think about the things that you've done wrong. It's very important for us to accept where we are in the present, warts and all. So remembering that you are unique and perfect as you are, whilst acknowledging that there is room for you to progress. And on a daily basis, make the choice to send away the upset. Forgive and release any upset you may have. So when we forgive, we are choosing to acknowledge the inner being, our innate, inherent qualities and virtues. In other words, we are choosing to acknowledge, we are choosing to embrace our divinity, which, when recognized, is healing in itself. So we are choosing to heal ourselves. So I would like to just pause for a while with a guided meditation. There isn't going to be any music in the background, but I'd like to invite you to just pause for a while, take your focus inside by using the breath, observing your breath effortlessly flowing in and out through your nostrils, and using the breath as the vehicle, the bridge that takes your awareness away from the outer world of behavior traits, learned behavior traits, to your inner world of positive qualities and virtues. Just all you need to do right now is to simply allow the breath to take you inwards. And as you do that, it means you're going through a process of letting go. And as you experience yourself letting go, you can feel that the body is sinking more nicely into the seat. And your limbs and your muscles are becoming quite settled into your body. And as that is taking place, you notice that your mind is becoming quiet. So the body becomes still and the mind becomes quiet. And just notice that you can hear the noise around you. You can hear, it may be the clock ticking, it may be some noise inside your space or outside because your windows might be open. But you're simply in this moment, being the detached observer. You're not impacted or being influenced by whatever it is that is going on around you, because you have become the detached observer. You're no longer the puppet on the string. You're not being pushed and pulled by external circumstances. And you have access to that innermost part of you, the inner being, the soul, the tiny point of light that you are, your divinity, that is located at the center of the forehead, between the eyes. This point of light that you are is eternal, it's indestructible, and it holds all the wisdom that you need as a soul living in this body to navigate the world of obstacles, challenges that are there to make us grow. Or how else would we be able to grow without the obstacle course, the challenges that often spin us into that space of non-forgiveness? However, in this awareness, I become really connected with this part of me that is forgiveness itself. Forgiveness first forgives the self for having forgotten who I am. Forgiveness enables me to put the load down, take myself out of that prison of bondage. And when I begin to forgive myself, love myself for who I am, love myself, warts and all, there is no one inside myself that judges me. There is no one outside myself that can judge me. So let me take responsibility for being the soul that accepts, that loves the self, no matter what. And it's in this awareness that I can grow to learn to forgive. I, the soul, I'm love itself. I, the soul, loves unconditionally. I, the soul, accepts myself for who I am. Thank you. Om Shanti. So if there are any questions, I think there are some very thought-provoking and challenging things I've said. So I just hand over to you now, Cicely. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, Nina, as usual, very fantastic. Lots of tidbits and methods to use. I just want to recap some of the things that you said to jog our participants' minds. And you said, you asked, and I would want them to ask themselves a question, why we should forgive. It's a good question to ask ourselves. This is a good starting point. And you said peacelessness is in our hearts and minds. It's very, very deep and very, very prevalent in regards to this whole healing process. Forgiveness lets the prisoner free. That I thought was very, very profound. Replace the anger with peace and tranquility. And there's the method to all of this. And then ask yourself the question, who do I forgive? Who am I forgiving? Forgiveness is releasing. And then Nina gave us that lovely story of the mother who forgave. And that was a hard thing to forgive. And also Nelson Mandela. He had to forgive in order to move on to the next step. Because if you don't forgive, you cannot move on to the next step. Unfulfilled expectations. This is what we have. Hurt people. We know this. As Nina said, we've experienced this. Bring the change and not being angry. So being the change and not being angry. Set a target and go through a daily process of releasing. So if you have any questions, we'd love you to unmute yourself and answer questions. We give you time to a few seconds to do that. So if anybody would like to unmute, and you can also put your camera on, that you're welcome to do that also and ask Nina a question. Thank you.
So as people are, as you're waiting for people to ask questions there, it's just as Preeti, would you like to say something or ask a question, Preeti?
Yes, thank you very much, Nina, for a great talk. I think you covered most of it, but my question is slightly different. It is, how can we stop being in situations that we don't feel the need to forgive people? So one is, forgiving people, and the second is how do we be so powerful soul that we actually don't feel hurt, and there is no need to, in a way, to forgive.
Well, indeed, that's very, very important. Now, as I was saying, I think I was trying to say throughout the whole talk that Rome was not built in a day. I didn't quite use that quote. And it really does take a lot of soul searching and deep inner work. Cicely is nodding her head in order to get to that point. And I suppose what I was also saying in that regard is that, so don't be hard on yourself. If you find that, it's like going up an escalator coming down, then please don't be hard on yourself. And I also talked about the importance of accepting yourself wherever you find yourself on the wrong. It's very important for you to accept where you're at, because it's only in accepting the self that I'm able to make that next step up the next rung. If I don't accept myself, there's no way that I move up. In fact, that in itself will cause me to go back down the ladder. Yes?
And if there is a situation that we know that we're feeling hurt, can we release at that point so that we don't hold on to that hurt and there is not a process to forgive? Like there's a situation right now. No, I'm getting
Go on.
No, sorry, I cut
you. So there is a situation that I have dealt with in the past, and where I talked about if we find ourselves when this person comes into our minds, we pass. And we pass because, and we're not aware that it's uncomfortable. It's the uncomfortability that causes us to pass, right? And we keep doing that over a period of time without exploring why it is that I'm passing, okay? That will build, that resistance towards that person will build. And that pattern of non-forgiveness will build, not just in relation to that person, but to anyone else who may step on my toe, my sensitive toe, okay? So I think it's important for us to really be mindful of those people where we pass, we tend to pass because so much discomfort is brought up. And there was this particular individual in my life where I used to pass. I passed a lot. I have to say I kept passing because I just could not stop there. The pain was too great when I chose to explore it. When I chose to explore it. And I decided, because I practice meditation and every day it will come up in front of me and I will pass. So basically, I thought, you know what, Nina, you have to do something about this. So I started sending, not passing, but literally holding the image of that person in light. And, you know, really just enveloping them with love, in love, and with not just on my own, but with the Supreme Soul. And it wasn't easy because I kept falling asleep. I, you know, have this image and all of a sudden I go up because there's a pattern there naturally, isn't there? And so it took time for me to really stay with that image of light around that person. And then after a while, I decided to write to the person and just to say, you know, whatever it is that happened in the past, I let it go. I really let it go. And very soon afterwards, I had this dream of this person handing me back all my childhood things. It's like my heirloom of my childhood experiences that I'd lost. I'd forgotten that I'd even lost them. This person gave them back to me. Now, what is that? I'm sorry, but I have to use it as an example because it's so powerful. I gave my power away through not forgiving that individual. Whatever it is that occurred between myself and that individual, I gave my power away. And I took that bag. I'd been carrying this bag for a very long time. Okay? So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that it's not something that happens just like that, because remember that pattern that I've used to deal with that situation, I've had for a long time, even before that person came into my life. So it's not going to just go overnight, is it? No. I just stop here in case, yeah. Anyone.
Yes, there is a question here, Nina, which I'll read from the chat from Caroline. She says, so there is a two-way connection in that we need to forgive ourselves and then the other person. But my question is, it is not necessary if the other person does not forgive us. So is it necessary?
No, it's not necessary because you've released yourself. You've released yourself from that toxic connection of unforgiveness with that person. So you're free. And there's no need for me to worry about whether or not the person has forgiven me. I have done what my responsibility is. And as I was saying, it's important for us to bring God into it as being, you know, the one that really is responsible for justice. Okay, whatever it is that that person needs to do will be done. Okay, when I forgive, it's almost as if I am protecting myself. I'm building a force field of light around me. So even if that person has negative thoughts and feelings towards me, it cannot get to me. I don't think we understand how powerful we are.
And very deep it is, you know, and I can relate to that, Nina, because I've experienced that you just have to release it. Have no expectations, like you said before, right? Have no expectations. So you just let it go. You be the one to unload the baggage.
Yes.
And if it's not returned, then I did what I had to do. And then, like you said, you get this force field around you because you were the one that let go. So they are holding the bag still, but you let the bags go.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
that's
beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, beautiful. This subject of unforgiveness is very huge, or forgiveness is a big topic. It's a big topic, and it's so topical in terms of the need for self-transformation and world transformation. If we don't practice that, we won't transform the self. And if we don't transform the self, we can't transform the world. We're swirling around in a world of toxicity and hurting people.
Yes. So it becomes a cycle of hurt.
Yes, a cycle of hurt, absolutely. A cycle of hurt.
Instead of a cycle of love, then it should be a cycle of love. It's a cycle of hurt.
Yes, yes, yes. So I feel very blessed to be able to understand what I need to let go of and not worry about the other person, but just taking responsibility for my part. Thank you.
Wonderful, Nina. Thank you. If there's any other questions, please do. So you can either put it in the chat box, otherwise we're going to wind up because we want to, in the interest of keeping our word as it relates to time, because it is now 10 to 5, right? Your time. I'm 10 to 6. So if there's any other questions, you can unmute yourself or you can put in the chat box. Otherwise, I think we'll say good evening, good morning, good night. Okay, thank you, Nina, from Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, for the thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ruti and Sabrina, for your questions. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Sharon. And there's the love. See, that's the circle of love that we need. So I invite you all to give us a heart before we leave. Let's see a heart from everybody before we leave. There you go. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Look at that. Lovely. John, yeah, that's there'll be others, Lynette. There'll be other opportunities. Don't worry about it. There are many of these. And Nina, I'd just like to share on tonight, we have that 30-minute conversation from 6:30 to 7 p.m. That's live on Facebook, streams live on Facebook. And then we start a new theme Monday through Friday. And each month we have these personal developments. We have these wonderful talks and different things. So we invite you to go to our Facebook page and see what we're up to next. And again, thank you for joining us. Nina, do you have any last parting words?
Yes, I just want to share that the monthly talk for next week is this healing for the end of August. I think it's on the 28th of August, is Healing Heart